Oh god, Sirfetch'd is the most smug-ass motherfucker Pokemon has ever invented, and I love it! That has nothing to do with the rest of the video, I just wanted everyone to know that. So yeah, here we are, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, episode 119. We are one stripping scene away from a full-on Yaoi Dojin, people. This happened! We will get into it. Oh god, that's a gay reference. Good. Damn it, why do you do this to me? So yeah, let's get started with where we begin, and that being just that beautiful quantum versus Ignister god guy scene. That has nothing to do with anything. I just thought it looked really pretty. Anyways, so yeah, our first big thing we get in this episode. Actually, before we get into that, I just want to point out, I've pointed this out a couple times before, but man, it was on point this week. I love Ai's sort of breaking the fourth wall, self-aware, trope talking about style dialogue. Like when he's like, I will tell you what happened to me in a moment, and he's like, oh no, whatever will I do, and all that stuff. That worked for me from the minute it started. Like the minute he starts just like deconstructing Yu-Gi-Oh tropes. Oh, I loved it. It was so good. And god damn it, the actors. Like, for all this show's problems, and trust me, there were many, I think the acting was, for the most part, always on point, especially from Ai. Because here's the thing, that dialogue I was just praising, it's really easy to screw that up. It's really easy for that sort of self-aware style of just script writing in general to kind of feel forced and or kind of feel too much like a pat on the back, or even just feel like a cheap excuse to do those tropes. But the way Ai's voice actor just brings the right combination of sadness and energy and anger and tragedy and just all these different emotions, like, it just sells it perfectly. And I gotta give Yuusaku's voice actor a lot of credit too. This guy was pretty much an unknown when he was hired, and yeah, he's had some pretty bad, wonky dialogue to say over the past 3 years, but man, whenever this guy had the moment to really get into the character and really sell him as a human being, man, did he pull it off, especially in this episode. Like, I don't think he had a weak scene in any of them. Just the way he brought all the sadness and confusion to Yuusaku, a character who has had very little chance to truly emote, especially when compared to the last couple of protagonists. Gotta give the guy a lot of credit. So now that we've praised the actors, I mean, we'll probably have to praise the actors next week when they do their curtain call. Yeah, just going into the big stuff. So we open with Ai and Lightning, and okay, and I'm going a little out of order here, but I want to talk about that first because it leads into everything else. And holy shit, I like this. I like this scene quite a bit. First up, seeing Lightning again was fun, him having some new dialogue, not just flashback. And what I loved about Lightning in this scene was that Lightning seemed so happy to take the victory away from Ai. He seemed so happy that if all else fails, he could ruin Ai's, like, sense of self and the way he thinks and his morality and just, like, make the guy suffer. Lightning's voice actor is also excellent. I feel like when this show gets remembered, the main antagonistic forces that will be remembered is Revolver, the way he is in the first arc, and, what's his face? Ai in this arc. I have a feeling Lightning will get a little overshadowed, but I really think Lightning worked pretty good as an antagonist. So yeah, there's that. And then we see Ai's simulation, and what's sort of clever is that shot of over the city, like on by that overpass, is used a lot. It was used in the first ending. It's probably used in the OPs all at certain points. There's a lot of shots in this show of people just kind of looking out and sort of being in deep thought about the world around them. And like what I was saying before, that can go so wrong, but kind of having that sort of sad, dark payoff to it, and just this idea that Ai just looks out, just as so many characters in this show have looked out, thought of the city, and contemplated about it, that he now has to look out and knows he's the one who ruined it. He's the one who fucked it up. He's the one who destroyed it. He made the world worse after he tried so hard to want to just do something right and do the right thing and be helpful and prove he wasn't like lightning and to prove the Ignaces and the humans can live together, and to just find out, like, no. And not even because it's impossible, but specifically because it's you. And what's sort of great was that it was sort of established from the beginning, I was the rebellious one, he was the lazy one, he was the one who was self-indulgent, did his own thing, or at least was more outward about it than the other Ignaces are. So one would assume those are the negative traits that would lead to destruction. But what was sort of implied earlier is that lightning, through his just scheming and intelligence and all this, would be what led to the world's destruction. I think it's interesting to think about that these two were the most opposite, but sort of just the extreme ways their personalities could go could both lead to the end of the world. I also like we don't spend a lot of time on how I would do it. I think it's more haunting for us to imagine what he saw in those simulations, to see what leads him to doing this ultimate darkness, this ultimate destructive act. Like, I think that's a really just haunting, creepy concept, and because it's the character we all love, like, he's arguably the most popular character on the show, and to see him be through so much pain and sadness, you just kind of wish it would just stop for him. And to see that this is the rationale he came to, like, this isn't like Go all of a sudden being like, I'm a dick now. Like, no, when put in all this context and everything I has gone through, I could see how he could go this direction. I could see how he could do this, like how he could rationalize this in his head. It's dark and it's twisted, but when you look at everything this guy went through, it's just so sad. And like just how lonely he feels and how far this loneliness pushed him. And speaking of loneliness, this is a nice little segue into what came next, and that is we got to see that card Revolver gave Yuusaku, and it's Borreload Furious Dragon. I will not lie, people, I did not think Furious Dragon would make it into the anime. I thought it was just something to throw in the structure deck, just a last minute thing, maybe something that got cut from a final duel with Revolver, but nope, they worked it in. I do kind of feel a little weird, like we get these structure decks before we see this shit in the anime. Like Mirage Stalio was out months before we saw that in the show, and there might have been one or two Yuusaku cards that did that too. Oh, like Ram Clouder, the Cyber structure deck thing. But like, yeah, it's weird, but it was effective, and I liked it. And hey, because the thing had been out for months, you didn't see it coming. So yeah, that was cool, getting to see that. And also, it's kind of a nice symbol of why these two characters are at odds. I feels that he can't make friends. He can't adapt to being around humans. He has no way to connect with anyone else. And Yuusaku, through just this adventure and wanting to break through fate, has done what I can't. He has made friends, whether it's Homura, Go, or in this case, the ultimate example, Revolver, his former arch nemesis, a guy he was at odds with. And ultimately, yeah, it came through them just not wanting to die, but they did find a common ground and were able to work together, and Yuusaku is ultimately in a better position in life and in the duel for it. So yeah, that's kind of this sad thing, and it's sort of interesting to think about that, once again, in a good way, Yu-Gi-Oh! Sort of takes fate and turns it on its head. A lot of people associate Yu-Gi-Oh! As this franchise that's all about fate and destiny and grandiose. That's really only the first one. Most of these shows are very nihilistic in that they depict fate as just this cruel, horrible thing that's only just going to make your life worse, and is just, the universe is just a worse place because of it. They do it at great points in 5Ds, Arc 5, GX, Zale, like they all have that. And what's sort of interesting is that when you look at it, it always goes back to this idea that what leads to the end of the world, what leads to destruction, is just the desire for improvement in the wrong way. Rather it's in 5Ds, it's creating the mech lords as a better weapon of war. In Zale, it's separating the Baryons so the Astrals can get stronger. Like, all these different things, it always comes back down to that idea of how power corrupts and how it destroys us. And it's sort of a nice little antithesis to what shonens are often about, being the idea that be the strongest, be the most powerful. Here in Yu-Gi-Oh! It almost often comes down to being the most powerful is ultimately what's going to ruin you. I always find that so interesting to think about with Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe it's a good subject for another video. But so yeah, this is getting a little long. Let's get to the end. And that is that I goes full on yaoi and tells Yuusaku, come into me, become part of me, let's be together, strip off that skin-tight bodysuit, you little slut! Okay, you didn't do that last part, but you get the point. Ultimately, that is an interesting way to sort of end the episode on. Like, this maybe final twist that I ultimately sort of thought that he could push Yuusaku to that point, take advantage of the idea that Yuusaku kind of wants to sort of feel like he can be a part of something again, have a group, be with something. And that's ultimately what I think he's trying to take advantage of. And, you know, again, he's just so desperately trying to hope that things won't go wrong and have some happiness and comfort in his life. And I think that's a really beautiful, interesting concept, and I hope we don't rush through the ending. Next week, I couldn't even get through the damn duel. There's so much to talk about. Just know that I like that Dark Fluid came back. I like that idea that usually the final boss monster they use in an arc ends up just feeling disposable. Like, how often did Majestic Star Dragon do anything relevant after it? You barely saw the triple context again. You get the point. But essentially, I like the idea that Dark Fluid came back and was the win condition. Like, it was gonna do it, it was gonna win it, but I was just like, nah, bitch. And I like that I just kind of waded through the negates. Like, he just played through them like any good combo deck player knows to do. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, that is that. This was a packed episode. It was an interesting episode. It was a fascinating episode. It is an episode that will inspire so much yaoi. And let's be real here, we kind of like it. Not always. Stop doing things with Yuma. Like, just stop it. Okay, so yeah, that was that. And now for the TCG question of the week. I will not lie, I'm mostly focusing on Vanguard this week because Champion Series, or Fall Fest, depending on what you call it, is this Saturday for people in my area. So I've kind of been more laser focused on playing Vanguard this week. But I do have one interesting little question because I totally didn't just pause to look stuff up, see what's coming out. So Nibiru has gotten very expensive, is pretty much the main reason for buying Megatins. But I still see a lot of people just a little nervous because, unlike Sphere Mode, which I kind of does the same thing, Nibiru can't be your 6th card. You will die. So, my question is, have you gotten on the Nibiru hype train? This is a judgment-free zone. I totally get both arguments for Nibiru. I just want to know, what are your thoughts on this card? Do you think it's worth the 6th card route? Do you think you'd rather play Sphere Mode, or even just know how to use your kaijus properly? Tell me about that below. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me next week for our big, epic Yu-Gi-Oh! Finale. God, stick the landing. Please stick the landing, Vrains!